Today I'm finally making the video that every YouTuber has been begging for. How do you hang a life-size Balrog on a fireplace? If you want to learn more on how you do that, or just hanging something heavy in general, stick around. Thought I'd do a quick video kind of showing the process of how to hang this Queen Studios Balrog, which for me is going on the fireplace. Now, I mentioned on videos a while back, I do plan on doing this fireplace in stone, but that project, I got so much stuff going on, is a long ways away. But I started thinking that actually mounting this Balrog wouldn't be on top of this stone, that instead I would actually have it already mounted on the fireplace and then put the stone around it. So with that thought being in mind, I went ahead and I painted the fireplace the same color, really light black iron ore that I chose for the walls. And this is kind of the process of what you got to do to hang it. So the first thing you got to do is decide exactly where this thing is going to go, which of course I want it centered, and I want it towards the top as much as possible. So I'm only planning on about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of clearance. So measured this guy out. He's 48 inches wide and about 39 inches high. I did a bunch of different numbers, figuring out where exactly like this mount goes on the back and how high this has to be to the top of the wall to get it where I want it and to get things centered. And then the next thing you need to do is, this thing weighs, I weighed him out actually, he's 71 pounds, and then the mount's 3 pounds. So you're pretty much talking 74 pounds, which isn't a god-awful weight, but still, it's pretty darn heavy. So I would not trust any type of wall anchors. I think this thing came with some heavy-duty wall anchors, I think more designed to go in concrete, but I definitely would not trust hanging this thing with heavy-duty anchors in drywall. So what you need to do is find where the actual studs are on this thing. Now, since this is going on a fireplace, typical stud placement's around 16 inches, and you can use a tool, something like this. And as you slide it across, you can see that is where the actual stud is. So you mark those lines. And the other problem you're going to run into, since the standard is 16 inches, and I think with a fireplace, who knows, definitely measure if you're hanging such a thing on a fireplace. But the spacing in between here is definitely not 16 inches. So you cannot mount this thing directly on the studs because they did not put this a standard amount apart. And when I measured the fireplace, it was actually about 16 and a half inches to the center of each stud. So what I did was I decided to use this piece of wood, and I've got it marked here where the stud is on this side, and then where the stud is on this side. And these other holes or black marks that you see here is where this thing goes on top. So I wanted to make sure this thing was in studs, and then I will attach this to this board, and I needed it to be this length in order for it to be centered on the fireplace. Now, with that being said, I'm using these lag nuts. Notice how I have a little screw on the end here where you can actually use a screwdriver to finish it off. And the reason I did that is these things are actually going underneath of this, which has to lay flat. So I can't just screw this in and then have this little piece sticking out. I need it to be flush with the wood. So what you can do is you use, I think they call these spade bits. But they're really good at drilling out holes. So I pretty much just drill it out. Found one that fits this exactly, and then where this would fit flat. So I'll do that in the 4 different areas that are going into the studs. And then I've got these shorter bolts that will actually go into here to mount this on the board. And then on board length, this is actually a 1 inch. It's actually used for steps. I guess the 1 inch is kind of the standard size. So I bought a step from Home Depot that has this 1 inch, because most 1 inch boards that you would buy is actually 3/4. Just like a 2x4 is actually 1.5 inch. So I want it 1 inch because when I do the stone, that gives enough clearance of the stone around it that when the Balrog's actually hanging on here, that the stone has enough clearance so it's not touching the Balrog. So this thing ends up going 1 inch, and this is probably like 1/8 of an inch thick, this metal here. So you also got to keep that in mind too, how far this thing's going to stick out. So yeah, the next step is to actually get this attached to the fireplace. All right, I just wanted to quickly show what I end up doing is I drill a pilot hole with a smaller bit. So I got the holes in here now that I need, but of course these are very thick. So then I find a bit that is close to that size. I usually use a scrap piece of board to test it out, make sure I don't have too big of a bit or too small of a bit. And then I'll drill the rest with that. And then that way, when I'm driving these things in, they should go in fairly smooth. And to drive them in, it's a lot easier to use an impact wrench that's got a little connection here. And then just find the right socket that fits into this, and then they'll drive in pretty easy. So now that I have this attached to the board, before I attach this board to the actual studs, I want to make sure of one last thing. I want to make sure that when I attach this board to the studs, that it's actually level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this 2-foot level. I'm going to put it right in between here. And then I've already taped on the wall where I think exactly it needs to go to level, but I'll go ahead, if it needs any type of adjustment now, I'll go ahead and move that tape a little bit to make sure that that is centered. Once I have it centered, then I can actually drill all the way through to the studs and attach everything. All right, got it attached. I did go ahead on this side and paint the screws the same color as the wall. Guessing you may be able to, if you really look, see a little bit of back there, so I want everything to blend in. But yeah, next step is to hang this bad boy. Now, I can lift it, but to be able to expert guide it in those 2 little holes and not hit the ceiling and all that, I'm gonna have to get a buddy over here. And here it is all hung, and I think mission accomplished. Luckily, all my measurements and all that ended up working out as expected. I do have it centered on the fireplace, and I do have it as high up as I was wanting to get it. And before I end this video, I guess I'll just give a little details on what this is. So this is the Queen Studios almost life-size Balrog. I think it's just a little bit short of being fully life-size from the Lord of the Rings movie. And this is kind of the beginning of my Lord of the Rings section. You can kind of see some of my other pieces over here. And this particular piece, they had the wall hanging version, which was this, and they also had one that had a pretty cool base. But for my purposes, I knew I just wanted the wall hanger, and it's got this very awesome lighting effect to it. You can also, via remote or the push button on there, change it where it pulses. Pretty much two different settings, either just lit up like this or kind of a slow pulse. But I do really love how they designed this, where the light just kind of shines through, kind of just like the movie, where he was this very fiery creature. And you can kind of see the details inside of the mouth also. But anyhow, I hope this video was helpful on, well, I guess if you got one of these things, you got to hang it. But really, if you got anything just to hang heavy in general, just give you some ideas. Thanks again for watching another video. Hey guys, I appreciate you watching another video. I'm a huge fan of home theater and these movie replica props. I'm going to put out a couple of videos each week in those areas. And if you're a huge fan like I am, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.